Hey, Magic Makers. Today we are having a conversation about gut health. And I know we've had a few conversations about gut health, but it keeps rearing its head. There's first of all, the gut is that even though it's three letters, there's so much to unpack when you really get into the weeds of gut health. And so I have another expert on here, Ms. Lindsay Renteria, and we are talking all about digestive. It's sometimes referred to as fire, also low stomach acidity. We're talking all the things like, dude, what does all that really mean? And should I pay attention to it? And oh my God, do I even have it? So Lindsay's here to unpack all that. And oh, we're also going to talk probiotics. Are you wasting your money or is it definitely something that you should do? So Lindsay, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So excited to be here because this is such a passion of mine and topic that we all really need to know more about, but then we really need to know about it once we're like, oh my gosh, my stomach hates me.
I know. And I think that's where most of us like get to is that, my stomach hates me. And some of us know the foods that cause our stomachs to be like, girl. And some of us are like, I don't know what it is. Like I'm eating food and I blow up like a tick.
Yep. Yeah. And this happens all the time. And then, especially as it rolls into your line of work, it affects like our weight, our waistline, our confidence, how we feel, the outfits that we pick, like even like intimacy with your partner, like everything it starts to affect. And then you like find yourself in this cycle of stomach not
Right.
feeling good, mentally not feeling good, and everything just keep going round and round.
So let's start with the food sensitivity. Right now I feel like because you and I are talking about it now, my computer's going to pop up the zillions of food sensitivity tests that I can order online. Now, is that truly something I can do online? Should I work with a specialist? Like, is it bullshit? Like, what is it?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I get it all the time. And I get a lot of clients who have already had food sensitivity testing. I get ones that are asking me about doing food sensitivity testing. And just like the bottom line, my overall opinion is I actually hate food sensitivity
Mm,
testing. I think it is something that we are all drawn to because when we think about it, from a surface level standpoint, I don't know what's upsetting my stomach, so let me get a test that tells me what is, right?
right.
That's like the basis of it. It makes sense. But when we think really deeply about this kind of testing, number one, there's all different types of food sensitivity on the testing or on the market right now, but there's a lot of it that can show tons of inaccuracies,
Mm,
which then makes us afraid of a food that we have no issue.
yeah.
So that's one thing that can be with it. And my biggest problem with it is I'm all about figuring out why we have symptoms and how
Mm,
actually can improve and heal those so that we can actually live life and go to happy hour with our girlfriends and like get a piece of pizza and not pay for it.
right.
And so when we get a food sensitivity test, even if it was like fairly accurate, okay, so it might give you a list of these foods that you can't have, or it's lit up like a Christmas tree because there's so many that went off. But now what?
Right.
Because normally then people take all of that out of their diet.
Yeah.
They're eating like 10 things. They're so
Hmm.
afraid to eat. And then now we're actually starting to deprive our
Right.
body and our gut of nutrients that we even need. So we can get actually even worse and have worse symptoms. So, and anytime I've had a client come to me that has had a food sensitivity test, they are anxious, they're so scared of food,
Yep.
they're confused, and they don't know what to do. And nervous system and how we think and our thoughts and our emotions and all of that is so directly tied to our digestion and our either function of our digestion or our dysfunction of our digestion. And so when we are more anxious and more fearful and more confused, we also are going to have more digestive issues. So it can actually sometimes make it worse. I have actually never used a food sensitivity test on a client, and I never plan to. And one of my biggest, I guess I would say, things I'm becoming known for in the space of why I get clients referred to me is people who are eating five foods and they
Yeah.
can't get anything else in their diet. So how do we actually take you from fearful and restricted to having that food freedom where we can actually eat the foods that we love again. And I do that without the food sensitivity testing. So there is a way to do it.
Mm.
I do not like doing them. You might get 5 different answers if you ask 5 different people, right?
Agreed. But I like this is why I like your approach because I see, I can pull up ABC tests on the internet, take it, but there's like probably a pamphlet that says, you got this result and here's what to do about it without you having a conversation or about what is the follow-up. So like maybe I'm supposed to pull out salmon and eggs, but maybe I'm supposed to pull out salmon and eggs for like 3 months and then do a test of salmon, do a test of eggs and see if it was just maybe that's all I ate all the time. So my body was just like
Mhm.
overhyped with whatever shows up on those tests. And that's my biggest challenge with it is that you make people pull all this stuff out without a lot of explanation, and they don't ever go to people like you
Yes.
who can be like, yeah, maybe there's something going on with salmon. And then it's kind of like, here's our approach versus pull.
Yeah. Yeah. And then people are usually left with, okay, well,
What
they're
do I
never
eat?
told how do you get it back in?
Right. Well, or like you said, they're left eating five things and they're craving everything because their diet is so limited.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And when we look at it from just like that, that's one avenue of that you can go down. But when we don't figure out, this I tell people all the time. I love testing. I use testing on every client. But when we just pay attention to the testing, we miss out on a huge part of
Yeah.
healing.
Mm.
Same thing with food sensitivity testing, even the same thing with the gut testing that I do. If we only look at that, we miss out on so much. So rather than saying like, okay, these are the results and this is what I need to do, if we don't figure out what let those results get there in the first place, then we don't bring about true healing. So let me dive into that a little bit is when I say what allowed those results to get there, let's talk about it with food sensitivity testing. Well, what created all these food sensitivities? Majority of the time, what's going to create somebody inability to tolerate food or feel well when they eat a certain food is either usually by two main things I see, and one of them can be actual breakdown of the tissue of the gut lining. So
Mm.
we have multiple layers to our whole digestive tract. We have layers at the bottom, we have mucosal layers that sit on top as like a protective mechanism. And when we think of our digestive tract, it's really one big tunnel from our mouth to our anus that is actually, now you have to think about this really deeply, but it's actually external to our body. It's like a tunnel that's going through.
You
And
know,
that,
so can I just
yeah,
interrupt you?
yeah,
Are you saying is that what people call leaky gut? What you
yes.
just described? Okay.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So that's what you'll see is leaky gut. So when food is going through when you eat something, our body is going to determine what it's going to allow to pass through
Mm.
that gut lining to absorb specific vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. But we can have breakdown of that gut lining where it's almost, yeah, that leaky gut, and you start getting larger things coming through this gut
Mm.
barrier, like food proteins and toxins and things like that. So then it's not as selective of what it's bringing into the body.
Gotcha. Now, could leaky gut lead to inflammation in the body?
Yes. Yes. Yep. And so that happens because it's going to set off our immune system. So let's say, and now lots of things can cause breakdown of the gut lining. That could literally
Mm.
be a whole another 45-minute conversation. But some really common things, the most common things I see, stress,
Mm-hmm.
medications,
Yep.
medications, so a lot of antidepressants, birth controls, NSAIDs, things like that can break down the gut lining over time. Lack of dietary fiber or
Yeah.
diversity in our diet, eating the same things
Okay,
all the
hang on one
time.
second. Ladies, did you guys hear that? Okay, for my clients, I like literally like beat you over the head about this. She said fiber, hello, and then she said lack of dietary change. Like you can't eat the same
Yeah.
shit over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. And I know we're creatures of habit. That's how humans are. I always say like just even in your grocery order, even if it's the same thing each week, just say like, okay, I'm gonna get two different things. or just get
Right.
like different kind of apples or a different kind of squash or something like that. You can mix it up. So those are some areas or some things that can create breakdown of the gut lining. So then once we have that, and then let's say we eat dairy is a really common one, right? People get
Mm,
bloated, they don't feel well, they get diarrhea, whatever. And now we have this breakdown in the gut lining. So we have these larger food particles, proteins, and things like that going through the gut lining. And our bodies are so smart and so protective. So then our immune system recognizes there's something coming into the system here that really shouldn't be here, sets off our immune system. And what does our immune system do? It protects us. So it kind of creates an antibody, which can then kind of set off this chain reaction of bloating, not feeling well, etc. That's how you see these things pop up positive on food sensitivity tests because our body
gotcha.
is creating antibodies against it. So then
Gotcha.
we remove it, right? And then it keeps happening again. We keep removing all these foods. But then again, by that lack of nutrients, normally, we start to get so fearful of food, and then we're more stressed. We can have even further breakdown of the gut lining. And so that cycle continues on and on and on and on.
So what you're saying is, so if I happen to have leaky gut, and we'll circle back on that, if I happen to have leaky gut and I'm eating salmon and turkey and broccoli and so forth, and it's leaking through my gut barrier, that might pop off as a sensitivity.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? So instead
Yes.
of it being me sensitive to it, it just happens that it's floating around in my system because it's not being properly digested.
Yes, kind of. So it is turning into a true sensitivity, but because it's not staying in the intestinal tract like it's supposed to.
Gotcha.
And it's not only, we should really just be extracting and absorbing through the body like the micronutrients, minerals,
Right.
and vitamins.
Not like I, this is probably an over exaggeration, but in my, for me to visualize this, I'm thinking
You're
like,
thinking of broccoli floating around in your
right. I'm
stomach.
like an actual
Yeah.
broccoli stalk is floating around in my system. I know that it's not that, but in my head, I have to be that's how your body is thinking of it
Yes.
versus it's
Yeah.
like kind of like an apple, like you can peel the skin. And
Mhm.
so instead of us peeling off the skin, we're taking the whole apple and your body's like, yeah, I don't want the skin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah, absolutely. And that happens all the time. You know, people say, like, I think I have leaky gut. And
Right.
might not. Another reason I see food sensitivities is just that the digestive capacity or the function of the digestion is really impaired in the sense of, and I know we're going to talk about low stomach acid, but low stomach acid. If we don't even have enough stomach acid to break down food to start to digest it, of course, we're going to feel bloated and gassy and all these things. Or is like our pancreas not kicking out enough digestive enzymes to help break down. So it can be a digestive problem too, and not a leaky gut problem.
Right. So let's close out at least for now, because you're going to open up a loop again. Close out for at least now. If someone were to say, "Do I have leaky gut?" Is it a test that I need to take? Is there just more like me being having awareness of symptoms? How would I know if I have leaky gut?
Yeah. So there are some add-on tests that I do sometimes to the comprehensive stool test that I utilize. But to be quite honest with you, sometimes I do that for like, okay, confirmation or to support something. But if somebody has all of the symptoms of having breakdown of that gut lining, that leaky gut, I really am going to do the same thing with them, regardless if a test says that they have it or not.
Gotcha, gotcha. So then, so we closed down on leaky gut. So now we talked about low stomach acid, and I feel this for a lot of people is probably the root of a lot of their problems.
Hmm.
And so, how would I how would I know I have low stomach acid?
Hmm. That's a great one because it's so common,
Mm,
but a lot of times it gets mistaken for too much acid and I need an acid medication. I need a PPI. I need a
mm,
Tums. I need a whatever. So then we shut down the pumps even more and we make the problems worse. So let's first just like really quickly talk about what stomach acid is and why we need it and what it does in our body. So stomach acid is really one our body's first line of defense. When we eat food and our mouth goes down our esophagus, lands in our stomach, our stomach acid really helps kill off bacteria, fungi, viruses that we don't want to enter into the system. So one, it's protective and it's part of our immune system. Number two, our stomach acid is so acidic. It could like literally break down copper, it could break down metal, like it will dissolve a lot. Okay. So, and it needs to be that acidic because it has to break down our food, especially when none of us chew our food enough. So it has to be breaking down food. It also helps to break down food so that the digestive process can start to happen and so that nutrients can start to be absorbed. When we have low stomach acid, we're not able to break down food as much, which means we're not going to absorb nutrients, vitamins, minerals as much. We're going to have more bloating. We're going to have more constipation. We're going to have potentially more diarrhea. We might get sick more often because we're not killing off bacteria and viruses and all these other things coming into our system. So, a lot of people say, well, how do I know if I have low stomach acid? Right? Well, a couple really great indicators is by having all of those bloating type symptoms, or maybe indigestion, or even acid reflux or heartburn, and having that, and also accompanying that with stress. Stress is a huge one. And the reason that that is so tightly correlated is because I'm like giving you a science lesson through, or a A&P lesson throughout here, I guess. But so our vagus nerve is responsible for helping with the production of stomach acid, or at least telling those signals to turn on, those proton pumps to kick on and pump out acid. And our vagus nerve is our largest cranial nerve in our body and kind of acts as that highway communication between our mind and our gut. And when we are super, super stressed, just to keep it really simply, that vagus nerve is not firing appropriately. And that's what we need to fire to signal to the stomach, hey, turn on the pumps, kick out the acid.
Right.
So if we're super stressed, that's not happening appropriately. It's our whole body, our whole digestive system is like a factory and assembly line.
Right.
And if
Right.
one is off, then the rest off. It's like a domino effect. So if we aren't pumping that stomach acid, then we have low stomach acid and we're not breaking down the food. But what can happen is at the bottom of our esophagus, we have something called our lower esophageal sphincter. And just stay with me for a minute. But this is super important because this little guy's job is basically when we eat food, it opens up, let the food through, and it closes after food is in our stomach to prevent the contents of the stomach, both the food and the stomach acid, from coming back into our esophagus and creating damage. But when we are super stressed, or we have a lot of bloating going on and we have pressure from air, that sphincter can weaken.
Yeah.
And when it does, it's like a floppy door. And now,
Right.
no matter how much or how little acid is in the stomach, it's going to come back up. So
Right.
now that's open because we're stressed. We have low acid because we're stressed, but acid is coming up regardless because we have a floppy door going on. And we go to the doctors and say, I have heartburn, I have acid reflux, I'm bloated, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, here is a PPI and take this. And now we've just shut down the stomach acid more.
So for those of you guys who don't know what a PPI is, can you explain what a PPI is?
Yeah. So PPI is a proton pump inhibitor. So we have literally these little proton pumps, which is what is kicking on to produce stomach acid. So a proton pump inhibitor, something like Protonix, which it's telling those pumps to shut down, do not produce acid. So
Right.
if we already had a low stomach acid problem, now we shut the pumps down even
Right now
more.
you have a lower acid. So for people who, if you're going to your local pharmacy, you're picking, it's like the Zantac of the world.
Omeprazole, all the
Yeah.
Zols.
Yeah. So if you're in the digestive stomach, Tums, all of that, those are the
Yeah, just any of
PPIs.
like the antacid medications, pretty
Yeah. And
much.
so the I want to say the most harmful ones of them all are the oh my God, the Xanax, all of those, because they come in like a freaking like cement truck and just like lay down the layer where yeah, Tums is tough too. It's not as like come in and like scorch earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and so you're absolutely right. And so I think for many of us, like we get bloated. And so of course, like every other commercial that you see on TV is like, you have this problem, take this pill, take this supplement. And so of course, it's not me. It couldn't be me. It couldn't be my food choices. It couldn't be my stress. But there's
Mhm.
magic in that pill bottle if I just take it.
Yep. Yeah. And we think that. And what's getting really scary in this more holistic slash functional type of space now that I'm in, right, is we're just trading prescriptions for supplements.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to take anything thing from Big Pharma, but I'll take this supplement.
Right. It's the same thing. That's why clients think I'm crazy, I think sometimes. I'm like, I hate supplements. I use them sometimes when we need to for a short amount of time, but the
Right.
goal is we're getting off of them.
That it, you know, 9 times out of 10, when I, it's probably the same in your business. 9 times out of 10, when someone first is either thinking about working with me or starting working with me, they're like, "Well, what should I take?" And I was like, a multivitamin, maybe
Hmm.
some protein powder,
Hmm.
creatine. That's
Hmm.
really like, those are my like bare minimums. And if you need something more, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. 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 It can be, I can't tell you how many women I've had come to me with like 20 plus supplements.
Oh,
And I'm sure you see it too. And we're just actually throwing money down the toilet at that standpoint. And I'm not here to waste anybody's time, money, or energy, mine or theirs.
right. And
So,
your goal is like, if you were to get on a pharmaceutical, you would be like, so doctor, how soon can I get off? Like that's like your like,
mhm,
we've been brainwashed into that. We're never brainwashed into, if I start taking this supplement, how soon can I get off it?
right. Exactly.
We
Exactly.
think that I should just sign up for the, supplement of the month club and just like keep
Yeah.
going until I'm dead.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Totally agree.
So with that said, for women who do have low stomach acid, one, clearly, let's start getting into that stress management system right there and figure out how to deal with that. But are there supplements that I can take to help that so I'm not in the doctor's office and he's handing me a prescription to, I was about to say Xanax, handing me a prescription to
Oh, yeah.
Zantac.
For Zantac.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are. I will tell you that I rarely use them,
Hmm.
because I try to focus on what is going to help long-term change. And again, can we do something without a supplement? But sometimes even just while we're trying to work on stomach acid, like digestive enzymes can potentially bring some relief just to help some of that breakdown food if that is a factor going on as well. Another one that can help some stomach acid production is just doing a little bit of apple cider vinegar and some
Yeah.
water about 15 to 20 minutes before a meal can help kind of stimulate.
Okay, so that's not bullshit.
No, no,
Okay.
that can truly help. There's also a supplement called betaine,
Mhm.
HCl, that can stimulate stomach acid. That's purely a Band-Aid, and so definitely people need to hear that is for sure a temporary supplement. That also, though, you need to be careful because if there are bacterial imbalances going on in the gut, then that can actually make things worse. So you could just
Gotcha.
have to be careful when you use these things. That's why it can be really tricky if you're trying to navigate this on your own. I used to try and navigate it on my own too. And I actually, it was funny, I found a container of supplements of mine from years ago before I knew what I was doing. And I looked at all of them and I was like, I cannot believe I was taking this. Like, I would never recommend this to a client to take every day. Like, who even told me to take this? I don't know if someone told me or if I was told myself or what, but we just have to be careful because we're just playing with fire. So, honestly, my favorite things to help with stomach acid is doing some breath work, physiologic sigh, which helps, how can we actually get our nervous system into that safe space again, rather than that fight or flight, go, 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 always on edge. That is what is going to help. If you compare that with slowing down before, during, and after a meal, you will see way better and quicker improvements than any supplement. And these are all things that every single one of us can do for free.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that a lot because, there was a client that I had a long time ago, and, she was a walking nerve, like, like she was just like a stress ball, like, and so much that she couldn't really get out of her own way, like stress, and it was kind of sad. And she was like constipated and didn't sleep. And her doctor was like, "Oh, you can just take Colace." And I'm like every day. That's what you're. I'm like, and it just like, it was just so sad. I'm like, no, this woman needs way more than just take Colis every day, because there's a problem. If you guys don't know what Colis is, it's a stool softener.
Mm-hmm.
And and I'm like, I'm no doctor, but I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, that just doesn't seem like a long-term solution.
Yeah, no. I mean, yeah, people they've been on just like Colace and stool softeners and Miralax and all these things for just years and years and years. And I'm like, all right, let's actually try to figure out what's creating this and work on those things. And yeah, we might use things for, I call them bridges.
Yeah,
Supplements are a bridge to help
right.
us in the interim while we're working on the things to make a long-term difference. Because when we're trying to add fiber back in, we have to do that slowly
Mm,
to tolerate it. So it takes a while to have that make a big time difference, things like that. So yeah, I mean, what I always ask, what is the big needle movers here? What's going to make a difference in the long term? And what sounds cool and fancy, but it doesn't really matter.
right, right. Now, are there any other, we talked about stress, but are there any other dietary changes that someone can make to help boost stomach acid?
So it's gonna, one thing, so I wouldn't say necessarily certain foods are gonna specifically help stomach acid, but actually being able to smell your food prior
Mm.
to eating can actually help stomach acid. And this is why. So
Uh,
if you walk in a house, right?
yeah,
Someone's
like your
cooking
mouth
like a big
waters,
Italian
smelling.
dinner.
Yeah, your mouth
Yeah,
waters.
mouth
Yeah,
starts
yeah.
to water. When our mouth starts to water and salivate, that's literally our brain telling our body, like, prepare for digestion. Food is coming. And when we produce that saliva in our mouth, we actually have digestive enzymes
That are already
in
starting to.
that saliva to start breaking down food. And when that happens, it's also going to tell the proton pump start to kick out acid. So we can prepare our body for digestion by just having the aroma of food. I tell people, even if you're at a restaurant, you don't have to be like weird and smell your food like a dog, but just let your hot plate sit underneath of you for a minute and have a
Right before
conversation
you like,
while you're smelling things. Yeah. So, and then I would say, if you're at home, be a dog.
right.
So, but that can be very helpful. And then it doesn't matter. You don't have to worry about getting specific foods.
I wrote down two things that I'm like, she can't get off this call until I ask these two things. But before we go there, one of the big thing, I was just on a call last night, and probiotics, I want to say in the last probably 10 years have just like blown up
Mhm.
everywhere. And there's probiotics, prebiotics, postbiotics, all the biotic that are out there. Now, is that something that women, and don't even get me started on Activia, but is that something that women should even be concerned about?
So we should be concerned about it because so the difference with prebiotic and probiotic, we don't hear as much about prebiotics, right? I think we're starting to a little bit more, but I explain this kind of like the fish and fish food, like a goldfish and fish food. So the probiotics are like the fish and the
Mhm.
prebiotics are like the fish food. So if we don't feed the fish their fish food, the fish are going to die. The probiotics are also, probiotic is just a beneficial strain of a bacteria, a good bacteria. So we either take those by capsule, eat them with food, and they also are what lives in our gut and helps our gut thrive and break down food and protect our gut lining and decrease inflammation and support our immune system and all of these things. So we have, beneficial strains of bacteria in our gut. We can also eat those through food, like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut. Sometimes pickled vegetables will be fermented tempeh, miso, those type of things are great for probiotic type foods. Kombucha is good. You just got to make sure it doesn't have a lot of sugar in it. But in terms of like supplement standpoint, so yes, it is good to get probiotic sources of food in every single day. And you
Okay.
can even kind of rotate the type you're getting because even yogurt, for example, I encourage people to look at the back of yogurt labels, and usually sometimes different brands will put different bacterial strains
Mm,
in there. So you can even rotate
right.
the strains of bacteria you're getting that way without really eating a different food. So you
Right,
can get
right.
varied that way. In terms of supplement, does everybody need one? Absolutely not. Should everybody take one? Probably not. And
Mm,
it really depends on what your specific gut bacteria look like. I have
gotcha.
seen time and time and time again with women taking a probiotic, and it may even make them feel good. And then we do testing, and they have overgrowths of every single strain that was in their probiotic.
A
So it can also create overgrowths
problem,
too
right.
much, yeah, that we don't want in our gut. So I always say that if you're going to take a probiotic, I always recommend like having a test done, a comprehensive stool test to look at the levels of bacteria in your gut. And if you're like, well, I don't want to do that, that's like too much, just eat food sources of probiotics. Those are going to be beneficial to us regardless. So that's really my take on that. I use them sometimes for a short amount of time if we need them, but I do not have every client on a probiotic. And I don't really believe that we need to take, especially a supplemental
Every day.
probiotic long term.
So the conversation that I was listening to yesterday was that very similar to what you said, that the she was a functional doctor, and she said, yeah, from time to time we all need help with the gut, but she's like, it's not something that I would recommend that you would be on for, one of those lifelong
Hmm.
things. And she was like, she goes, if anything, cycle, because of what you said, I could have 5 billion of strain X, and I just keep taking the same probiotic, and strain X is now going to go from good to the bully in the gut.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And it happens. And I see it all the time on testing.
Yeah. So, so ladies, bottom line, what she's saying is from time to time, yes, a probiotic is okay, but taking, going every month or however long you go and buying the same probiotics, the same over and over again isn't going to be good for you long term. And if you are truly concerned about probiotics, see a professional like Lindsay, get a test to be like, what are you low in?
Yeah.
And it could be just you adding in the foods she talked about, the
Right.
fermented foods,
Right.
the yogurts, the kefir, and so forth. And if you love kombucha, rock on with your bad self, because that's straight up, that is just like that's
It's
like
acidic.
that's a dare. That is like eating something on a dare, and I'm gonna need a lot of money for that one.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, if none else, I always go towards food first. Food is medicine, and I think we forget
Yeah,
that so much medicine and healing is within our food that we can eat. And so, whether that's like I always have sauerkraut in our fridge, and then I always have different yogurts, and it doesn't have to be a dairy yogurt. It can be a non-dairy yogurt that can
right.
have live cultures added to it. So I just rotate some different non-dairy, dairy, sauerkraut. Those are my three biggest ones that are my favorite. Sometimes I just eat a couple spoonfuls of them.
Yeah,
Doesn't have to be that much.
when I was first having all of my gut issues, my doctor's like, she goes, every time you go to the fridge, she goes, take a teaspoon of sauerkraut. She's like, that's it. She's like,
Yeah.
like that's it. It's when you go in the go into your kitchen, if you're getting a glass of water, take a spoonful of sauerkraut, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
let's see how it goes from there. And then I can tell you every other time, take a
Yeah.
spoonful of sauerkraut.
Yeah. I do feel like I need to clarify though that the sauerkraut that I'm referring to is not the kind that most of us had growing up on that like you buy in a bag on the shelf.
Yeah,
The sauerkraut with live active like fermented
it's in the fridge.
cultures
It's
in
in the
it.
refrigerated
Yes,
section.
yes, refrigerated. It's much more tart. It's a little bit different texture. Sometimes it takes a little getting used to.
Right. It's a little like
Um,
I'm gonna call it, it's a little more chewy.
yes, it is. It is. I find if you put like, so I like mixing mine with my eggs. If you mix a scoop of it just on a warm meal after it's plated, It just kind of makes it like room temperature, but it also makes the consistency much better and not chewy.
Yeah, because when
It
I
makes the
have it,
flavor more mild.
because I liked when I was a kid, I loved sauerkraut, and you're right, it was not the like
Mhm.
sauerkraut of what you had. So as I'm eating it, it was, just taking a teaspoon, it was like, all right.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. For sure.
Um, so the last two things I wanted to talk about, which I think a lot of women fall into it, and I'm guilty as charged. So like you guys know I have had my own food issues for a long time. This especially women of a certain age, we get stuck in eating the same shit
Hmm.
over and over and over again because it's habitual, right? Like I'm going to the grocery store and I just pull the same stuff off of the shelf. What is it like you, and you kind of brushed over it, but I think it's a big point about eating different foods.
Hmm.
The way I've always described it to my client is that like one, you always want to have a different flavor profile in your mouth so that you're not craving. Like that's
Hmm.
the first way to like take cravings and nip them in the bud. Second is that we talked about food sensitivity. I don't want to develop sensitivities to food so that if I eat salmon and chicken all the damn time, and if you told me, hey, Kim, salmon is a true sensitivity for me, I'm now fucked. Like all I can have for my life is chicken.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So we need to just keep diversity in. And yeah, like I said before, I get it. Like we are creatures of habit. But even doing things like soups are a great way to incorporate different veggies in there, even if they're things you don't normally eat, just kind of throwing stuff in there. Stir fries are great for
Mm.
that. You know, that kind of sometimes just roasting different vegetables. If you have kids, you can actually incorporate kids into this. One of my mentors actually made this suggestion. It was really great a while ago. Is like if you have kids, like let them actually pick out
Oh, neat.
a vegetable at the store and make it fun and incorporate them. So that was a great suggestion from my mentor before. But yeah, just incorporating different things or like where can we sneak different veggies and fruits and fibers and things like that into? And when we say diversity, it isn't just vegetables, it's veggies, it's fruit, it's seeds, nuts, grains, all of the different plant sources
Mm.
which are going to have these different fibers in it. And it just keeps our ecosystem in our gut happy and thriving.
Yeah. And the other thing, reason why I push fiber on women, one, clearly it makes you regular, that A, but B, one of the reasons I push it, it was primarily for hormone, helping people with like excess hormones, like as a way to really help
Yeah. Yep.
pull it out of your
Yeah.
system.
So like raw carrots, beets, cruciferous vegetables, bok choy, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli. These are great at being able to eliminate excess hormones from the body, especially estrogen, anything like that. It really is just, it's really good for the liver, which in the liver is what is going to help get rid of those hormones and kind of keep everything in balance and where it should be.
Yeah. So this has been like absolutely fabulous. Like, I said to Lindsay before we started, like sometimes I have a list of things I want to talk about, and then they start talking about something and we make this right turn. But we've pretty much hit on all of the things that I wanted to talk about. So I'm really excited about. One last question is that, can gut health impact, fatigue and brain fog?
Absolutely. So this kind of goes back to that leaky gut scenario.
Mm,
And so when we have things crossing that gut lining we don't want to be, included in there is things like certain toxins and some bacteria, when they're overgrown in our gut and certain things, they can actually possess these toxins that can leak through that gut lining. And when that happens, they can be inflammatory or they can cause systemic symptoms. Really common ones, headaches, joint pain, fatigue, brain fog, muscle pain, allergies, itchy eyes, skin issues, autoimmune disease, all of these things. I always say if there's like something going on and you're like, nobody can figure this out, I don't know why it's happening, check your gut. Literally, check your
yeah.
gut. I have clients that come to me all the time. They're like, I don't have predominantly digestive issues, but I've like this uncontrolled autoimmune disease, this thyroid disease, this Hashimoto's that I cannot get under control. We start to work on their gut and their symptoms start to get better.
Right. Yeah. And, I think for a lot of people, they don't realize the random things. Because I tell people, like, especially in menopause, like, there's a lot of random things that your doctor won't tell you are symptoms of perimenopause. Like, dry skin, like everything just feels like itchy and scratchy, and like and it's like one of those symptoms that it could be anything. It could be like take a shower. It could be put lotion
Mhm.
on your body. Like, and it could be,
Mhm.
it could be leaky gut. And so it's really interesting that for a lot of women, I'm like, you have to track your symptoms, right? Because if you think you'll remember, you will never freaking remember. So it's like, put something in your notes on your phone and just write it down, because it could just be, as sitting down with a professional like Lindsay, she'd be like, oh, yeah, that seems like symptoms of leaky gut, or oh, that seems like symptoms of whatever else it could possibly be. And now, instead of you feeling like you're a crazy person, you're like, oh my God, someone like realizes like there's something really wrong with me, and I am not that crazy person that I
Yeah.
think I am.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say to almost every client I talk to, maybe they'll come to me and they do have a primary digestive complaint, but when we really get into the weeds, they have all of these other symptoms, but they didn't think to mention it because they didn't think it was related to their gut. But tell them it seems like, oh, I have migraines. I
Right,
can't get out of bed, or I feel super stressed. And then, okay, I actually have this, diarrhea too.
right.
And whatever, it seems like they're all separate things, but they're actually all connected. And then once we
Mm,
start to work on things and, unravel things and get actually some healing under a belt, they're like, okay, wow, I see how this was just all connected and affecting one another and all
right.
stem from gut issues.
Right. And as you kind of like unpacked the all the symptoms, people start to be like, oh my God, well, yeah, well, when I was 25, this happened. And
Yep.
you're like,
Yep. Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
so this has been such a great conversation. And thank you so much. Like, you've really, like, I think did a great job of just making it, even though you said you're giving an AP class, I think it was very layered. And I can, as a lay person, I could be like, okay, yeah, all right, I see what she's putting down. And so thank you so much for that. And so I ask all of my guests, what's one thing that makes you feel magical?
I think one thing that makes me feel magical is one, I think from like this side of things, just being able to, after 15 years of working in the medical field, I had a lot of patience. But in the last, almost 2 years of doing this now, I feel like I have helped more women in such a
Mm,
more impactful way than I ever was able to in those whole 15 years, which to me just doesn't even feel real.
right, right.
Sometimes. And so that has been really great. And then I think there's always, I feel like, two parts to everything. And then just from like on a personal standpoint, what makes me feel magical, I feel like is literally being outside on a trail by myself. I
Mm,
feel like nothing bothers me. I literally feel like magical in a sense, if that makes
right,
sense. Just like, okay, feel free. And so I always
right.
encourage everybody, find what that is for you and do
Yeah.
it. Do it often.
Yeah. It's like, for me, as soon as you said that, like I pictured like the crunch of like just like you're by yourself and like you're nothing, but you hear the crunch
Mhm.
of your feet, and it's just like this like hypnotic sound that just feels like sounds like the best sound ever.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All right, magic makers, please, if you have any questions, comments, anything about digestive, reach out to Lindsay. And Lindsay, where can they find you on the socials?
My Instagram name is Lindsay Marie Wellness with an EY. And my messaging is always open on there. If you guys ever have questions, anything like that, send me a message. I'm a total open book. I love just having conversations with people.
Yeah, so Magic Makers, reach out to her. She's not just being nice on the podcast. Absolutely reach out to her if you have any questions. She also has a lot of great content on her Instagram. So if you're not following her, do so, because you probably get a little education and all of that magical stuff. All right, Lindsay, thank you so much again, and enjoy the rest of your day. And Magic Makers, I will see you guys next week.